Hey guys, what's up? Jeff here, and today I'm going to be installing a Dometic RTX 2000 air conditioner on this 2021 144 4x4. This van is owned by one of our clients and we're building it out for them. And this is my third Dometic AC unit that I've installed on a 144. And I've learned some things along the way, and I'm going to share those with you, and hopefully they're going to help you when it comes time for you to install one of these air conditioners. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing you've got to understand is these air conditioners were originally designed to go in semis over the cab. And so they give you a lot of different pieces and parts to use when installing this, and most of those you're not even going to use at all. For example, this is the template they give you, and it is, I'll tell you right here, the size, about 15¼ by 19. So 15¼ by 19, it's going to go this way in the van. So this is the front to back and side to side. The problem with this is if you cut this thing 19 inches, you're going to have a rib on the roof of the van going here and down the middle. And so what you have to do is they give you this rubber material to put around it, used basically as a gasket for the air conditioning unit. The problem is because you're going over the ribs, you have to build those up so that everything's even. So what I've done in the past is I've used butyl tape in between the ribs, built it up to the height of the rib, and then used this material that they provide to make a gasket, and then I use window weld, and I put the air conditioner down, and it works, but I found there's a much better way, much cleaner install, much easier, and that's what I'm going to show you. So we're not going to need either of these. We're not going to need this template. What I did is I found a company that makes a gasket. It's a CNC milled gasket. Not really a gasket, it's really an adapter for the RTX 2000 on a 144. You can also get a gasket for it on a 170, on a ProMaster, on a Transit. They make it for all of these, but the gasket or the adapter is going to be specific to your van. So here's the gasket. So not only is it specific to your van, but it's specific to where you're going to place the air conditioner. So when you go to order the adapter, you have to tell them how far. There's a little plug on the top of the van, and they tell you measure from the center of that to the back of the cutout, and they need to know that in order to make this CNC milled gasket. And it's made out of a really hard rubber material, and you can see that it's actually milled out for the ribs. And so this is fantastic, because what it does is it sits perfectly over the ribs. It makes a great seal. You don't have to build anything up with butyl tape. And then what I also like about it is because it's so wide, you can put your, I use window weld to attach this. You can put two beads of it, one on the inside, one on the outside. The other thing about this you'll notice is it's much smaller cutout than the one that they provide you, which I also really like. Part of the reason that the one they give you is so big is there's a big wiring harness coming out of the air conditioner that has to fit into the inside of the van. Well, that's why they have this one 19 inches wide. But the nice thing about this is they've actually provided a cutout. You can see that right there for that wiring harness. So this cutout is exactly the size it needs to be for the AC unit to fit down in, and then your wiring harness fits right here. So where the other one was about 15¼ by 19, this one is probably about the same length. Yep, 15¼ So it's exactly the same front to back, but side to side, instead of being 19, it's only 14. And then the cutout sticks out additionally. So I'm really excited to use this. I've heard really good things about it. This adapter costs, I think, $178, and I'm going to link to it in the description. I'm not an affiliate. I don't get paid anything for this. I just love this product and think that it's well worth it. When you go to install this air conditioner, it's going to save you a lot of time, a lot of hassle. You're not going to have to worry about leaks. And so let's get into it. So I'm up on top of the van now, and I've got the adapter. And what I told him is I wanted it this air conditioner as far back as I could possibly get it. Because what I'm gonna have is I'm gonna have the air conditioner, I'm gonna have two 100-watt solar panels, then I'm gonna have a max air fan, then I'm gonna have another 100-watt solar panel. Now that's a tight fit on a 144, and so I needed to put this as far back as possible. There's a rib that runs through right back in this area, so I want this to sit just in front of that rib that's on the inside. And so what they told me was that was 16.5 inches. There's a plug right here measuring from the middle of that, the back of the cutout is 16.5 inches. So that's what I told them. That's how they made this. And the notch for the wiring is going to be always on the driver's side. So I can see that if I set this down and slide it, it fits perfectly right there. So it's not hard to figure out where this thing's going to be placed, because that's the only place that it fits and sits flush. So I'm just going to measure, and sure enough, it is 16.5 inches from the middle of that plug, which is what you'd expect with a CNC, right? It's going to be pretty much dead on. I really like how this thing sits over the ribs and everything just sits so flush. It's going to make this so much easier. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark out where I'm going to cut, and you can just use this template or this adapter as your template and really you can't even have it cockeyed or anything, because this is the only way it fits, because it's sitting over those ribs. So I'm going to just trace this out on the inside, and I'm going to trace out the notch as well. Okay, and then it also has these holes that I'm going to have to drill, because that's where the there's bolts that are going to go up through the ceiling and attach to the air conditioner and hold it in. But I'm going to do those later. So I just got this handy dandy cutoff saw from Home Depot. It's in Milwaukee. I really like Milwaukee tools, and I'm going to try that on this. I've never used it before. I usually use a jigsaw with a thin metal blade, and you can certainly use that. You can use a Sawzall. There's different ways, but I'm going to see how this works. So now that I've got it traced, I'm going to move this adapter out of the way, put on my safety glasses, and we'll see how this goes.
I went ahead and used the cutoff tool to cut the straight lines, and then I used my jigsaw to cut the rounded corners and to cut out the notch for the electrical. Then I cleaned up all the metal shavings, and I cleaned it with rubbing alcohol. Then I laid down some tape with about a 1/4 inch gap between the adapter and the tape. And that's going to be to run a bead of caulk around the edges. Then I sprayed it with Rust-Oleum primer and paint in one, let that dry, and then I laid down my window weld. You can use any kind of urethane adhesive. I have this handy dandy electric caulking tool, but this stuff was so thick that it wouldn't even work. So I used my hand caulking gun, and even that was pretty tough. By the time I got all the way around, my forearms were cramped up pretty bad. So just take your time and try and get a nice smooth bead and get everything covered. Make sure there's no gaps, and if you have to, use a little popsicle stick to make sure you got everything covered. Then I went ahead and laid the adapter down, pressed it down, and made sure that it was really secure. Next, I put a bead of that window weld all the way around the bottom edge of the adapter, and then I went ahead and smoothed it out with my finger, and that makes sure that you get a really nice seal on the bottom, and the tape makes sure it's a clean line. And then I took the tape off right away. You don't want to let it dry with the tape on. And then I just put a piece of plywood and a heavy box over the top of it and let it sit for 24 hours. The next day, I was ready to go ahead and place the air conditioner unit. So this time I was out of window weld, and so I used some Sikaflex. I think it was Sikaflex 252. It's another urethane adhesive. And then I had some help placing the air conditioner in the hole. Wasn't able to film that because we were moving things around on the roof of the van. Then you go inside the van, and I'm laying out where these bars are going to go. These bars come with the air conditioner, and they secure the bar to the ribs of the van. So because I had already framed out my ceiling, I cut some little notches so the bar would sit up flush with the ribs of the van. Cut that out with a multi-tool on each side. And then I apologize for the lighting, but you take these bolts that they give you, you put on a lock washer and a washer, and then you screw the nut onto the end of the bolt and screw it down about halfway, and do that for on each side. And then you're just going to put that bar up, and I've already drilled the holes where these go, and you can do that. They're in the template. I just drilled those right down through the template, through the metal, and then sprayed it with some Rust-Oleum. Then you just put these up there and screw the bolts into the holes. And then they recommend using a torque wrench with a torque setting of about 44 inch-pounds, which is 5 Newton meters. Go figure. I didn't know what that was, but I had to look it up. But anyway, if you don't have a torque wrench, just snug them down. Don't go too tight because these are going into plastic, the inserts that are in plastic. Once you have those tightened down, just use an open-end wrench and tighten those nuts down onto the top of the bar, and that's going to keep the everything snug and keep any of the bolts or nuts from working themselves loose. So that's it. Really pretty simple installation. This is the wiring harness that it comes with, and it comes with the wire. And I'll just run this along the ceiling, down the wall, and down to my battery bank. I fuse this with a 80 amp breaker, and I'll link to that in the description, the one that they recommend. It's a Blue Sea breaker. This does come with a fuse, but I prefer the breaker. And so I'll just run this down, breaker, and then into my my distributor for my 12 volt power. So it's a really clean installation. When I put my ceiling in, I'll just put a trim piece all the way around it. And it's really pretty simple. The adapter from DIY Vans makes this 100 times easier. And so I really recommend it. I will link to that in the description as well. And hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you in the next one.